Imagine you skipped the grocery store this week. No meat, no bread, no vegetables. If you wanted dinner, you'd have to track it for hours, chase it across open land, and get close enough to kill it with a wooden spear. That's how every meal worked for your ancestors. But hunting wasn't just dangerous because of the animal they were chasing. Sometimes the real hunt had already begun, and they were the ones being hunted. For most people, hunting looks simple. You spot an animal, throw a spear, bring home dinner. Movies make it look fast. A few minutes of action, then a celebration around the fire. Reality was nothing like that. For nearly 300,000 years, hunting was one of the hardest things a human being could attempt. It wasn't a daily guarantee. It wasn't even the safest way to find food. A failed hunt could mean going hungry for days. A successful hunt could still leave someone dead. Yet somehow, generation after generation, humans kept walking into the wilderness armed with little more than sharpened wood, stone tools, and something no other animal possessed: the ability to plan. So what actually happened when ancient humans went hunting? The first thing to understand is that the hunt usually began long before anyone saw an animal. Modern hunters often rely on rifles, binoculars, maps, and vehicles. Ancient humans relied on memory. Every footprint, broken branch, patch of disturbed grass, and pile of droppings told a story. Archaeological discoveries at Boxgrove in southern England suggest that humans were doing exactly this nearly 500,000 years ago. There, researchers uncovered the remains of a butchered horse surrounded by finely crafted stone tools. It wasn't the work of scavengers stumbling onto a lucky meal. It was evidence of hunters who understood animal behavior, returned to the right locations, and worked together with remarkable planning. To most of us, the landscape looks empty. To them, it was full of information. A single bent blade of grass might reveal that a herd had changed direction. Fresh hoofprints pressed into damp soil could tell them the animals were still nearby. Even birds suddenly taking flight could warn that something large was moving through the area. This wasn't instinct, it was knowledge built over thousands of generations. Children learned these skills simply by watching older members of the group. Long before they were strong enough to hunt, they were already learning how to read the land like a book. But finding an animal wasn't the hardest part. Getting close enough was. Large Ice Age animals weren't helpless prey. Wild horses could outrun humans with ease. Reindeer could disappear over the horizon within minutes. Mammoths weighed several tons and could kill a hunter with a single swing of their trunk or a misplaced step. And predators were watching too. The same herds humans followed also attracted cave lions, hyenas, wolves, and bears. Every hunting ground was shared with animals that had evolved for millions of years to kill. In other words, ancient humans weren't entering a food court. They were entering someone else's territory. That's why hunting was rarely a solo activity. Evidence from archaeological sites across Europe and Africa suggests humans hunted together in organized groups. Each person likely had a role. Some tracked the animals, others quietly moved ahead to block escape routes. The strongest hunters carried the primary weapons, while others waited in positions that forced the herd toward natural obstacles. Communication mattered just as much as strength. Unlike wolves, whose hunting behavior is mostly instinctive, humans could discuss a plan before it happened. They could change that plan if something unexpected occurred. They could remember mistakes from previous hunts and improve the next one. We know these hunters weren't carrying crude sticks. In 1994, archaeologists excavating a coal mine in Schoningen, Germany, uncovered 8 beautifully preserved wooden spears dating to around 300,000 years ago. Balanced much like modern javelins, they showed that early humans had already mastered the art of crafting specialized hunting weapons long before bows and arrows were ever invented. That ability changed everything. Sometimes the goal wasn't to outrun the animal, it was to outthink it. One of the most fascinating examples comes from Le Côte de Saint-Bralade, on the island of Jersey. Archaeologists believe Neanderthals repeatedly drove mammoths and woolly rhinoceroses towards steep cliffs, where panic and gravity did the rest. Instead of overpowering animals weighing several tons, they transformed the landscape itself into a weapon. Intelligence, not strength, became their greatest advantage. And even then, success wasn't guaranteed. Persistence hunting may have been one of humanity's greatest advantages. Most predators explode with incredible speed, but only for a short time. Humans are different. Our bodies cool themselves through sweating. Our long legs, spring-like tendons, and efficient breathing allow us to maintain a steady pace for hours. Imagine a deer sprinting away. It stops to recover. Then it runs again. Then it stops again. Each burst of speed raises its body temperature. Eventually, exhaustion begins to win. Meanwhile, the humans never stop walking or jogging after it. They don't need to be faster. They only need to keep coming. Hours later, the animal can barely stand. That's when the hunt truly ends. It sounds almost impossible today, yet anthropologists have documented persistence hunting among modern hunter-gatherer groups living in environments where this ancient strategy is still possible. But there was always a price. Every hour spent hunting meant another hour without food. A twisted ankle, an infected cut, or a broken spear could turn a hunting trip into a disaster. Even after killing an animal, the work had only begun. A large carcass had to be butchered quickly before scavengers arrived. Meat needed to be divided, carried, preserved, and shared. Nothing was wasted. Bones became tools. Tendons became cord. Hides became clothing. Fat became fuel. For ancient humans, one successful hunt wasn't simply dinner. It was survival for weeks. But everything we've talked about so far misses the biggest challenge. Tracking the animal wasn't the hardest part. Throwing the spear wasn't the hardest part. Making it home alive was. Because the moment an animal hit the ground, every predator in the area suddenly wanted the exact same meal. Finding the animal and killing it were only half the battle. The real danger often came afterward. The smell of fresh blood traveled astonishing distances. Within minutes, ravens circled overhead. Their calls acted like an alarm system for every predator nearby. Wolves, hyenas, cave lions, and bears all knew exactly what those birds meant. Some archaeologists believe that many confrontations between humans and predators didn't happen before the kill. They happened after it. Imagine spending 6 exhausting hours tracking a bison across open grassland. Your group finally brings it down with a shower of wooden spears tipped with carefully shaped stone points. Everyone is exhausted. Some people immediately begin cutting the meat, while others keep watch. Then someone hears it. A low growl. You don't own the animal because you killed it. You own it only if you can defend it. Many prehistoric hunting sites contain the bones of both prey animals and large predators. Sometimes scientists find tooth marks from carnivores on the same bones that also carry cuts made by stone tools. That suggests humans and predators weren't always hunting each other. Sometimes they were competing for exactly the same meal. This meant every successful hunt became a race against time. The hunters worked quickly, slicing away the richest cuts first. The organs came out early because they spoiled the fastest and contained enormous amounts of nutrients. Fat was especially valuable. During the Ice Age, fat wasn't just food, it was survival. Lean meat alone couldn't sustain a human for very long. Eat too much protein without enough fat, and the body begins to struggle. Hunters understood this long before anyone knew the science behind it. They prized marrow hidden inside thick leg bones, rich deposits of fat around the organs, and brains protected inside the skull. Nothing edible stayed behind unless there was no other choice. Even the bones continued to provide value. Long bones were smashed open with carefully chosen rocks to reach the marrow hidden inside. Large shoulder blades became cutting surfaces. Antlers turned into handles. Tendons became strong cord for tying spearheads onto shafts. Animal hides were scraped clean, stretched, and transformed into clothing, blankets, and shelters. One successful hunt could transform an entire community. At Dolní Věstonice, in what is now the Czech Republic, archaeologists discovered a settlement where mammoth bones were used to build structures, while tusks, hides, and ivory became tools, artwork, and everyday objects. A single successful hunt provided far more than meat. It supplied the raw materials that kept an entire camp alive. Ancient humans didn't separate hunting from everyday life. Hunting supplied almost everything, but perhaps the most impressive part wasn't the weapons, it was the patience. Modern people are used to instant results. We press a button and food arrives at our door. Ancient hunters accepted failure as part of survival. Many hunts ended with nothing. The herd caught their scent. The wind changed. A spear missed. The animals escaped. Then they tried again the next day. And the day after that. Here's something most people never consider. Ancient humans didn't always kill the animals they ate. Sometimes they watched lions or hyenas make the kill, waited until the predators moved away, and then risked everything by stealing what remained. Imagine walking toward a fresh carcass knowing the animal that killed it might return at any second. Hunting wasn't always about killing. Sometimes it was about courage. Success didn't belong to the strongest hunter. It belonged to the one who refused to quit. This patience also shaped how groups worked together. Contrary to the image of one heroic hunter defeating a giant animal alone, evidence suggests cooperation was the real superpower of our species. Older adults shared knowledge gathered over decades. Younger hunters provided speed and endurance. Skilled tool makers repaired damaged weapons before each expedition. Others remained in camp preparing fires, preserving food, or caring for children. The hunt began long before anyone left camp. Every person contributed. That cooperation may explain one of the greatest mysteries in human history. How did relatively small groups armed with stone tools manage to hunt animals weighing several tons? The answer probably wasn't superior strength, it was organization. Imagine 20 people working together with perfect timing. Some quietly move behind a herd, others wait near a narrow valley. Everyone knows their role. Nobody rushes forward too early. The animals don't realize they're surrounded until it's too late. One mistake by a single hunter could ruin the entire plan, but one well-coordinated group could accomplish something that seemed impossible. This ability to cooperate at such a high level separated humans from almost every other predator on Earth. Lions hunt together, wolves hunt together, but humans could invent completely new hunting strategies, teach them to others, improve them over generations, and adapt them to entirely different environments. That meant the same species could hunt reindeer across frozen tundra, fish along coastlines, trap rabbits in dry grasslands, or stalk massive bison across open plains. They weren't built for one environment, they learned how to survive in all of them. And with every successful hunt, something extraordinary was happening. For decades, scientists believed hunting simply rewarded intelligence. Today, many researchers think the relationship worked both ways. Smarter cooperation led to better hunts. Better hunts provided more food. Better nutrition helped support larger, more complex brains. Those larger brains then produced even better strategies. Hunting and human intelligence may have evolved together, each pushing the other forward over hundreds of thousands of years. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't stone. It wasn't wood. It wasn't even fire. It was the ability to learn, remember, and teach. But hunting didn't just feed ancient humans. It changed who they became. Every successful hunt strengthened something far more important than muscles. It strengthened trust. Imagine spending an entire day tracking a herd across frozen ground. You can't succeed if one hunter panics. You can't succeed if someone refuses to share the food afterward. You can't survive if everyone thinks only about themselves. Hunting forced humans to depend on one another in ways few other animals ever had to. When the animal finally fell, it wasn't one person's victory. It belonged to the entire group. The strongest hunter didn't eat everything. The meat was divided. Children ate. Older members who could no longer hunt still received food. Injured hunters who had risked their lives were cared for until they recovered. This may seem ordinary today, but in nature it's incredibly rare. Most predators don't feed members of the group that can't hunt anymore. Humans did. And that decision may have changed our future. Archaeologists have discovered ancient human skeletons belonging to individuals who survived for years despite severe injuries, broken limbs, missing teeth, and illnesses that would have made hunting impossible. They lived because someone else continued bringing them food. That tells us something remarkable. A successful hunt wasn't measured only by how much meat came back to camp. It was measured by how many people survived because of it. The hunt became the foundation of community. But hunting also transformed the human mind. Think about everything a hunter had to do before throwing a spear. They had to remember where animals migrated during different seasons, predict the weather, watch the direction of the wind, understand which animals were dangerous when cornered, recognize hundreds of different tracks, communicate silently, coordinate with other hunters, build reliable weapons, repair broken ones, know when to chase and when to walk away. Each hunt was a puzzle, and every puzzle rewarded intelligence more than raw strength. Over thousands of generations, those challenges favored people who could observe carefully, solve problems, and share knowledge with others. In many ways, hunting became one of humanity's greatest classrooms. It taught patience, discipline, planning, cooperation, and perhaps most importantly, it taught storytelling. After every hunt, people gathered around the fire. They talked about what happened, where the herd moved, which strategy worked, who made a mistake, how someone escaped a charging animal. Those stories weren't just entertainment. They were survival manuals. A child listening beside the fire might one day avoid making the same fatal mistake because they remembered a story told years earlier. Knowledge stopped dying with the person who discovered it. Instead, it was passed from one generation to the next. That may have been humanity's greatest invention long before writing ever existed. But eventually, everything changed. Around 12,000 years ago, in different parts of the world, humans slowly began farming. Instead of following animals, they stayed in one place. Instead of waiting for migrating herds, they planted seeds. The hunt no longer determined every season of life, yet it never truly disappeared. For hundreds of thousands of years, hunting shaped our bodies, our brains, and our behavior. Even today, you can still see echoes of that world. The excitement of tracking a goal, the satisfaction of solving a difficult problem, the instinct to celebrate after hard work, the desire to gather around a table and share food with family. Those feelings didn't appear yesterday. They were forged over countless hunts, stretching back into a world almost impossible to imagine. Here's the part that amazes me. Your ancestors walked into landscapes filled with predators stronger, faster, and better armed than they were. They had no metal, no engines, no maps, no medicine. No guarantee they would return home, and yet they kept going. Not because they were fearless, because they had to. Every successful hunt meant another winter survived, another family fed, another generation given the chance to grow up. Eventually, one of those generations became you. Tonight, millions of people will open a refrigerator without giving it a second thought. They'll spend longer deciding what to eat than your ancestors spent deciding whether they could afford to fail, because they didn't choose between chicken or beef. They chose between hunting or watching the people they loved go hungry. Every supermarket, every kitchen, every warm meal you enjoy today exists because countless generations survived hunts that could have ended in tragedy. You're not here because they were the strongest creatures on Earth. You're here because they worked together, adapted faster than anything that hunted them, and somehow found a way to come home. And perhaps that's the greatest hunting story ever told. For almost all of human history, dinner wasn't waiting behind a cold metal door. It was somewhere beyond the horizon, and bringing it home was one of the greatest challenges our species ever faced.